Hi, this is Maggie. In this video we're going to talk about calculating an XY coordinate so that you can blit a surface to the correct location on another surface. Let's begin by talking about some useful surface methods, get width and get height. You can use these methods to get the width and height of any surface. So you can get the width and height of the window or the surface created by loading a JPEG, PNG, or GIF from disk, or a surface that is maybe passed to a function that is designed to work with any sized surface. It's a good habit to get into to get the size of the surface from the surface at the time that you're going to use that information, rather than using hard-coded values. This is in case you change the size of the surface and forget to change the hard-coded values. This is listing 8.5, and you can see here we send the get width and get height messages to the surface called background, and we send the get width and get height messages to the surface called square. This is an image from the text, which is an annotated drawing of listing 8.5 running. It shows a screen surface and a much smaller square surface that we might wish to blit to different locations on the screen. The smaller square surface is the surface called square from the code. You can see from the annotations that the screen surface, the window, is 480 by 480 pixels, and the square surface is 50 by 50 pixels. First, this means that if we send the get width and get height messages to the background or the screen, both methods will return 480. And if we send the get width and get height messages to the square surface, both methods will return 50. Now, the most important thing to take into consideration when locating a surface on another surface is to remember the size of the surface, because when we blit, we are specifying the upper left corner of the image. So imagine that we want to blit the square to the center of the background. Let's compute the x coordinate. If we get the width of the background, we get 480. If we then divide that by 2 to find the center, we get 240. That would be the exact center along the x-axis of the background. If we blit there, then the upper left corner of the square will be in the center of the background, which means that the square itself will be to the right of center. So to get the square exactly centered, we have to move that coordinate over to the left by half the size of the square. That way, half the square will be to the left of the center of the screen, and the other half will be to the right. So the square will be centered. You can see that computation in the code here for both the x coordinate and the y coordinate. We get the width of the square from the square surface and divide it by 2, and we get the width of the background and divide it by 2. We then subtract half the square's width from half the background's width. The other time we need to consider the size of a surface is when we're boundary checking, which is important when we move our surfaces around on the screen. Because we give the coordinate that will be the top left of the surface when we blit it, we can boundary check for 0 at the left edge and at the top. Blitting our square to 0, 0 will put it in the upper left corner of the screen. Let's add that code to listing 8.5, and we'll call it listing 8.5 enhanced. So I'll add a comment. split square to upper left, and then we'll write background.blit square 0, 0. And when we run the program, you can see we have a square in the upper left. Now, the bottom right, like this square down here, is a different matter. The bottom right of the screen is 480, 480. But if we blit there, that would be the upper left of the square, and so the square would be down and to the right outside of the visible window. We need to blit to 480 minus the size of the square, or 430, 430. We do those calculations here, where the comment says, calculate coordinate to blit the square to the bottom right. We get the width of the background and subtract the width of the square for the x-coordinate, and we get the height of the background and subtract the height of the square for the y-coordinate. If you work out where you want something to locate on graph paper, and remember that the coordinates we pass to blit will be the upper left of our blitted surface, then you should have no trouble calculating coordinates and checking boundaries. Whenever possible, write your code to be general, to use the width and height of the surfaces and not hard-coded values, so that your program will work even if you use different sized surfaces. I recommend you practice with this. Recreate listing 8.5 with a square surface. Try to write it without looking at listing 8.5, but reference back to it if you need to. Then calculate coordinates for blitting the square to the upper right and lower left corners. See if you can create a pattern or a picture by blitting squares within the window. Once you can calculate coordinates to blit a surface of any size to any location of your choice within a window, you're ready to move on.